What is 7-Zip? 7-Zip is a powerful open-source file archiver available for free. By default, it uses its own 7Z archive format, but it can also create some of the other more common formats, like zip and tar. 7-Zip cannot create RAR files, but it can open them and extract their contents. Let's download and install 7-Zip. Open a web browser like Internet Explorer. In the address bar, enter 7-zip.org and press enter. Make sure you go to 7zip.org and not 7zip.com. On the 7-Zip homepage, click the download link for the version of 7-Zip you want to download. There is both a 64-bit and 32-bit version of 7-Zip. I am running Windows 7 Home Edition 64-bit. I will place a link on screen to another tutorial showing you how to check whether you're running a 64 or 32-bit version of Windows. On the download information bar, click the Run button. This will download the file and then automatically start the installer. On the 7-Zip setup window, on the Welcome screen, click the Next button. On the License Agreement screen, read the license agreement. Click to select I accept the terms in the license agreement, and then click the Next button. On the Custom Setup screen, click the Next button. On the Ready to Install screen, click the Install button. When the installation is complete, on the Completing screen, click the Finish button. To launch 7-Zip, click the Windows Start button, All Programs, 7-Zip, and then 7-Zip File Manager. Let's review the 7-Zip File Manager interface. The bottom pane of the window is the file browser to find the files you want to compress. The main toolbar contains the tools needed to work with compressed archive files. The Add button will add the item selected in the file browser pane to a new compressed archive. We'll browse to and select a couple files to test with. You can click this drop down to select other drives and locations. Downloads. This is the location I download all my internet downloads temporarily to, and then clean it out every once in a while. We'll just select a couple files here to work with, a couple small ones. You can select multiples by holding down the Control key and then left-clicking multiple files. After selecting them, click the Add button. The Add to Archive window will open. Under Archive, enter the name you want to use for the new archive file. By default, it'll try to save the file to the same directory as the source files, with the same name as one of the files in the archive. You can change the output directory by clicking the Browse button. Archive format. Here we select the type of compressed archive file we want to create. By default, it'll probably use the 7Z archive format. Zip is probably the most common, so let's select that. Compression level. The higher the setting, the more compressed the files will become. Higher settings take longer to compress and decompress, but will be smaller in size. We'll select Ultra. Compression method. By default, it'll use Deflate, which is made by 7-Zip, because it's able to create more compressed files than some other methods. Number of CPU threads. On the right, it'll show the number of threads your processor supports. Mine supports 3 threads. You can change the number of process threads it uses to compress the file. The more threads you use, the faster the file will be compressed, generally. Split to volumes, bytes. Here we can select the maximum file size. If the archive is going to exceed this size, it will split into another file. When the file is decompressed, it will automatically look to the next file in the group. This is useful if you're emailing the file and want it under, say, 10 megabytes, or if you need it to fit on a CD or DVD. The last thing that we're going to cover on the Add to Archive screen is the encryption section. By default, anybody can open an archive file like a zip. If we enter a password under encryption, It'll place a password on the file that must be entered before it can be opened. I'll enter a password of password. If you want to confirm, you can click the Show Password, and we can see that it is password. Encryption method. You can select either Zip Crypto or AES-256. AES-256 is more secure, but it's only compatible with some of the most modern compression programs. If you use AES-256, you won't be able to open the file using the built-in Windows 7 unzipping utility. Let's choose Zip Crypto for the best compatibility. Now I want to have a warning here. The last thing that we need to remember when encrypting a file is that even though the data can't be extracted, you can still view the archive and see the names of the files in it. Make sure that you name your files accordingly so they don't give away important information of the file names. Like you wouldn't want a file saying, Dave's getting fired next week.txt. When everything is set the way you want, click the OK button to create the archive file. Extract. Extract is used to extract an archive file after you have browsed to it in the File Explorer. Let's browse to the zip file we just created. I'm going to change to the C drive, the temp folder, and here we can see our new archive test.zip. With that selected in blue, with new archive test.zip selected in blue, we'll click the Extract button. The extract window will open. By default, it wants to extract the file to the same location as the compressed file is in. You can change the path if you like. This archive is called new archive test.zip, so the new folder will be new archive test. Click the OK button. We now get the Enter Password window. We could have just entered this in the previous window, but I wanted to show you this window. Enter the password. If you have problems or just want to check that you're entering it correctly, click the Show Password, which we can see again as password, and then click the OK button. Now if I open up the temp folder on the C drive, we can see that we have the zip archive we created, and we can have the new folder with the contents of our files from the zip. And here are our 3 files that were inside. Test. The Test button is used to test the validity of an archive file. This doesn't actually extract the file, it just tests to make sure that the file is in a working order. With an archive highlighted, click the Test button. We have to enter our password again. We'll now get the testing window. This will show information like the number of files in the archive and most importantly whether or not there are any errors. Here we can see it shows there are no errors. This lets you know that everything is good. Just click the OK. There are also copy and move buttons. This is the same as copying and moving files from Windows Explorer. Delete, as one would think, deletes the selected files and folders. The Info button opens the Windows Property window for the selected file. You may find some files that 7-zip is not set to open by default. You can set the file types associated with 7-zip by clicking in the Tools menu and then selecting Options. On the Options window that opens on the Systems tab, there's a list of all the supported archive file formats. You can select them individually, or you can click the Select All button. We'll select the most common archive types, like zip and RAR. Now click the OK button to apply the changes. Now if we open up the temp location, we can see our new archive test.zip file has a new icon with a little Z in it. This represents that double-clicking on the file will open up in the 7-zip manager. The last thing that I want to mention within the 7-zip file manager is the built-in benchmark software. Let's click on the Tools menu and then select Benchmark. The benchmark window will open. It will automatically start running the benchmark with the default settings. Let's close out of the 7-zip file manager. Now usually when you use 7-zip, you're not going to open the file manager before you get to a file. You're going to browse around, get to the file, realize you want to open it. So most of the time I use the 7-zip menu available when you right-click on files and folders. Let's open back up the temp folder. I have a test RAR file we can use here. Now we can select a single file or folder, but we can also hold down the Control key and select multiple files that aren't next to each other. I'll hold down Control and select the 2 archive files. Once the files and folders are selected, you right-click on one of them, and we now have a new 7-zip menu. We have several options for right-clicking that we're going to go over. Add to Archive. This option will open the selected files and folders in the 7-zip file manager, where we can compress them like we did before. Compress an email. This option will compress the file and then open it with your default email client. There are also options to compress to zip or 7Z formats and then email them. This will compress the files and then open a new mail message in your default mail client. Let's select Add to temp.zip. Yours won't say temp, it'll say whatever the name of the folder that you're within. We can now see that we have a new file named temp.zip, and it has our 2 archive formats within it. Now let's take a look at extracting the contents of an archive file. We need to browse to the archive file to test with, which in this case is again my temp folder on the C drive. All of the following options will be from using the right-click menu for 7-zip. I'm going to test on this RAR file here. Right-click, 7-zip, Open Archive. This option will open the selected archive file in the 7-zip file manager. You can then extract as shown previously. Extract files. This option will open a new window where you can select the extraction settings and location. Extract here. This is the option that I use all the time. It is by far my favorite method to extract the contents of an archive. This will extract the contents of the archive file in the current directory without asking any questions. Extract a folder name. This will extract the contents into a folder with the same name as the archive. Folder name here is RegView. This is useful when the archive contains hundreds of files that you don't want extracted into the folder with a bunch of other files. You can select this and have it use its own folder. Test Archive. This is the same as the test button in the 7-zip file manager interface. It validates that the file is good and in working order. Let's use my preferred method. Right-click, 7-zip, extract here. If it was password protected like our zip file, we would have to enter the password first. We can now see that the contents of the archive extracted into the current directory. You should now have 7-zip downloaded and installed, as well as have a good understanding of how to use 7-zip to create archive files and how to extract them.